tonight. So again, welcome to tonight's event. Voting in 2021, it's not what you think it is. I'm Donna Ward from the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area, and I'm so happy to be joined tonight by Daryl Jeffries, the president of the Oranges and Maplewood NAACP, as my co-host. Hello, Daryl.
Hello, Donna. Nice to be here.
Nice to be here too with you. In addition to his role at the NAACP, Daryl serves as the president of the Men of Essex and the Historical Society of East Orange. Plus, he has an extensive journalism and media background, so we're so pleased to have you join us here tonight.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We plan to review the key changes that are happening to the voting process this year in New Jersey, and who better to explain that and answer questions than Christopher Durkin, our own Essex County Clerk, who's responsible for supervising the election process. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Donna, for inviting me.
Our program is going to be as follows. I'll go over some slides summarizing the key overall changes and show a video explaining the new in-person voting machines. And then Daryl and I will ask some questions of Chris, then open up to the audience. If you have questions as we go along, please put them in the Q&A part of the webinar there at the bottom of your screen. And then we'll hopefully, if we have time, we'll be able to open up and get to those questions at the end. Daryl will then make some closing remarks, and then we have a fantastic musical performance for you from the Newark Arts High School to leave us hopefully on an inspired note. But before we start talking about this year's voting changes, I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Marquita Evans for some opening remarks to kick us off. Dr. Evans is currently the president of Bloomfield College with a 25-year background in higher education at minority-serving institutions, primarily in Texas. Having spoken to her, I know she's passionate on the subject of voting rights, and it's my most sincere pleasure to introduce you, Dr. Marquita Evans.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for giving me the special honor of opening today's webinar. Voting in 2021 is not what you think it is. You know, this is the perfect title given the changes to this year's elections, and you'll hear much more about that in just a moment. But first, I want to express my gratitude and hope that all of you feel the same way regarding the right to vote in the United States of America. You know, the need to continue to push forward to ingrain in our citizenry that voting is a right and a privilege that not all of us around the world have. And it's just as critical today as when our country's forefathers first included voting protections in the United States Constitution and in our state's constitutions. The work that you and all of us can do to encourage people to come out to vote is paramount for living in a true democracy. Every single eligible voter in our nation should not forego their responsibility to have their viewpoint heard. Only when our collective elected leadership truly understand the needs of all of the constituencies in their jurisdictions will we all be able to benefit from the fairness and equity that everyone having their say at the poll truly brings. We know that it is voting that permits all of us as citizens to put into place the leaders that best represents our ideas and interest. I am so grateful for your work to encourage our citizenry not to squander it. You know, there's a saying that the world is run by those who show up, and the work must continue to ensure that more and more people and entire communities become educated about what showing up truly means. Showing up for voting to me means doing your due diligence in advance to understand the platforms of each candidate, asking questions to ensure your understanding, and seeking to confirm that your information source is actually a valid one. It is otherwise hypocritical to complain about your government if you are not showing up to vote. You know, as a young child growing up in Alabama during the civil rights movement of the 60s, it was ingrained in me over and over again the importance of the vote. Your voice truly matters. You know, as the college president of our state's only four-year predominantly Black and Hispanic serving institution and a minority serving institution, I tell my students all the time, there is great power in voting. Use your power to be heard. By doing so, you become a part of honoring those who have put their lives on the line to protect the right to vote for all citizens. Only when we all vote can we elect a government that represents all people from every corner of our country, locally, regionally, and nationally. In the upcoming elections and those that will follow, please, please, please encourage everyone that you know to get out to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Marquita, for those inspiring words and the reminder not to squander the privilege that we've been given about voting, and reminding us how important we can't take it for granted. I think we're going to start now. We can move on, I think, to some slides. I'd first like to start off by thanking all the sponsors who've helped us put on this program tonight, in particular Project Ready, the NAACP, and all the other sponsors you see listed on the screen who've collaborated with us tonight on tonight's event. And I hope that we can continue to work together to get out the vote as we move forward. Now let's review some of the key changes happening for the June primaries. Remember, even though primaries are for the parties to select their candidates for the general election, unaffiliated voters can register with a political party in person at the polls on election day or via your vote by mail ballot. You also have until May 18th to register to vote for the primary, which you can now do online in New Jersey. You can request a vote by mail application until June 1st by mail, or by June 7th if you come in person to the county clerk's office in Newark. And then June 8th is election day for voting in person at the polls. Now I'd like to go over some of the key changes that you might see for the primaries for this year. One of the key things to keep in mind is that there won't be automatic mailing of ballots like there were last year because of COVID. You will only get a ballot in the mail if you've already signed up to receive one. You also won't be able, if you do get a vote by mail ballot, to drop it off at the polls like you were able to do last year. This year, you need to either mail it in or drop it in one of the drop boxes. New Jersey, you might have read that New Jersey just signed legislation to implement early in-person voting, but this won't be available in June. It will be available in November, so that's coming in November. However, there will be a new process for voting in person in June using new machines for paper ballots, which will be available for the June primaries. So now we'd like to show a video produced by the Superintendent of Elections Office for Essex County on how these machines are going to work.
Essex County has a new voter-marked paper balloting system with a verifiable paper trail for use in elections beginning in 2021. Most voters will enter the polling place, sign the poll book, and receive a voting authority slip, just as they have done in previous elections. They will also receive a marker, a pre-printed ballot, and a privacy sleeve. In addition to tables and privacy voting booths for filling out ballots by hand, there will be at least one ballot scanning device for each voting district. The ballot scanning device will also include an Americans with Disabilities Act compliant audio tactile device attached to headphones. Voters who require accessible voting should request this device to listen to audio detailing the contests and candidate names, and use the device to cast their vote, just as they have done in previous elections. You will be directed to a privacy voting booth where you may make your ballot selections. When you have completed your selections, please take the time to review your ballot and verify that you made the choices you intended to. You may notice that ink from the marker you used to mark the ballot has bled through to the other side of the paper. That is not a cause for concern. The ballot is designed so that bleed-through will not affect the scanner's ability to accurately record your vote. There is a place on the ballot at the bottom of each contest for write-in votes. Please clearly print the name of the candidate you wish to vote for in the space provided, and don't forget to fill in the oval next to it. Once you have completed marking your ballot and have verified your choices, place the ballot into the privacy sleeve provided and proceed to the ballot scanning device. Give your voting authority slip to the poll worker near the ballot scanning device. Then, insert your own ballot in any orientation into the scanner, using the privacy sleeve to protect the privacy of your vote. The scanner will read the ballot and deposit it into a secure internal compartment within the device. If you need assistance scanning your ballot, keep your ballot in the privacy sleeve and ask a poll worker for help. After you enter your ballot into the scanner, please wait until the device indicates the ballot has been accepted by displaying a ballot successfully cast message before leaving the polling place. Voters may view election results on the Essex County Clerk's website, www.essexclerk.com. Thank you for voting.
Okay, so that's going to be quite different than the old electronic machines in the past, Chris. So we're gonna get into that in more detail. So I think what we're going to do now is ask some questions of Chris, and Daryl and I have some prearranged questions before we get to those that come up in the Q&A. So I'd first like to start, Chris, with just some general questions about the ballot boxes, vote by mail, poll locations, that kind of thing, before we get into those new voting machines, in-person voting machines. So Chris, the first question is, how can you check to see if you're signed up for vote by mail? It doesn't seem to mention that when you check online to see when you're registered, like when I check online to see if I'm registered to vote, it'll have my town, it won't have my address, but it won't say whether I'm signed up for vote by mail.
Okay, well, good evening. And first of all, I want to thank Donna Ward and Ann Moore and Darrell Jeffries for the invitation to inform and educate the public on your voting rights. Our collective goal should be to expand access and opportunities to cast a ballot. And I know that the legacy of the League of Women Voters and the NAACP and all of the community action sponsors tonight is in wanting to be inclusive of hearing all voices. Donna, as far as finding out if you're a forever vote by mail voter, there is no computer access, no link to that. You'd have to email the county clerk's office at info@essexclerk.com to ask that, or call us at 973-621-4922.
And is that because it's it's too difficult to create that kind of capability within the voter registration database?
Well, it hasn't been, so it's part of the SVRS system, the statewide voter registration system, and the state has not set up that function for us to access.
Do you think then soon, though, the state website can be updated to show the address on record, the address, not just the town, but the address on record?
Very interesting question. So when you check, am I registered to vote? It does not show your street address. It shows, as you just said, it shows your town and your voter ID. That is due to Daniel's Law, which is protecting people from the public knowing their address. Daniel's Law was passed recently. It was passed before it was figured out the correct implementation for it, because there's a lot to it. You know, there's judges and prosecutors, even former judges and prosecutors, that need to be taken off of the public roles. So it's at a pause right now, Daniel's Law, to figure out how to do this. And that will be figured out right now until December. And then December, they're looking to implement it. But it's a privacy protection. My understanding, when you sign up, when you register for an ID to track your ballot, you can see your address, but you can't see, am I registered, your address.
Okay, fine. Daryl, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Donna. Hi, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Darryl.
Since we can't drop off ballots at the polls, how many boxes are there and where are they located?
Okay, great question. And it's really a great invention for security and for access and for timeliness of return ballots, where a secure ballot drop box is placed in every municipality in Essex County. There's 22 municipalities, one in each municipality, and then there's 2 in West Orange and a total of 4 in Newark for a total of 26 secure ballot drop boxes. They are picked up on a daily basis, the contents. To each box, there is 1 registered Democrat, 1 registered Republican, and a sheriff's officer for security purposes. So it is a very secure, and it's 24-hour video surveillance on each secure ballot drop box. So it helps to bypass the U.S. Postal Service and get your ballot in faster and get it counted faster and verified faster.
Should there be any emphasis on areas that rely more heavily on public transportation with respect to where the placement of the drop boxes are?
Yes, that is in the works. It's actually any town that has more than 5,000 people, which every town except for Essex Fells qualifies in Essex County, plus colleges or universities with more than 5,000 students. So we have a couple in Newark. And the county clerk's office, there has to be a secure ballot drop box. So in the next 2 weeks, the Board of Elections, there's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats that are commissioners of the Board of Elections. They make the determination, the decision of where these ballot boxes should go based on the law and based on population and access. So that's happening right now. There's a couple that might be moved based on, but moved very, not too far from where they are now, but just maybe away from the entrance of a police station and maybe moved to a university, but that should be confirmed within the next 2 weeks.
They'll be moved strategically, but they will be accessible.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Next question for you, Chris, is when will the sample ballots be available?
Okay. Well, the sample ballots will be on the Essex Clerk website tomorrow. You can access and see all the sample ballots. There's 550 Democratic sample ballots, 27 Republican sample ballots, 550 Democratic ballots because there's county committee races in each of the 550 districts. Also, voters will be being mailed their sample ballots. They should receive their sample ballots, voters, in between 7 and 10 days before Election Day. So we have to wait actually until voter registration deadline, which is 21 days before Election Day, which is May 18th, only 12 days from today. And then we get the list, the file of registered voters, and then we're able to label the sample ballots and get them out to the voters.
Okay, great. I'm going to pivot back to Donna now.
Okay. Chris, now that we know that the June primary election is going to be held in person and not all vote by mail like it was last year, will the same polling locations be open?
Great question. And I'm going to talk real quickly about last year. We had an epic turnout, a record turnout with an all vote by mail election last November in Essex County. We had 345,311 voters cast ballots. Statewide in New Jersey was a record. More than 4.5 million voters voted in the election. But we're going back to a regular election, and with new voting machines, as you mentioned, which we're the first county in New Jersey to go all paper. And what I mean by all paper is all human marked paper ballots, so that we can identify exactly what a voter intent is or was. So that will allow for, if there's 100 voters, there should be 100 paper ballots inside inside the voting machine. And I know you're going to get to the audit later on, but yeah, it's, I think the voters, it's a voter-friendly process, and it was actually a partnership with community action groups and county government to decide on going to an all-paper ballot and going away from electronic machines, which are programmed by private companies. And so I think for security purposes and for the level of assurances for the voter, that the voter's intent is right on a ballot. I think it's very important for us.
Yeah, I think you said that an all paper ballot system is ultimately much more secure than the old electronic voting machines. So I understand why we're switching to that, but it is a change. And as we know, because we were in the business of educating voters all the time, sometimes this information it takes a long time to trickle out and to educate voters on new systems. That video was great that you explained, and you showed us this afternoon. You sent us a public service announcement that you're going to start running too about it. But what kind of information and messaging do you think that voters are going to need to understand this new polling process without making them suspicious? I'm fearful now that any changes now that government makes to voting processes are viewed with suspicion. And so what kind of messaging can we give to our sponsors, give out to our members to make them feel, what do they need to know about this?
Yeah, well, we need to share all this information. Information is power. We need to share that video, that how-to video, the PSA that I sent you and I just put on my Facebook page, which I am going to run on Comcast, Cablevision, Fios for 2.5 weeks leading up to Election Day. What everyone has to remember is that the 2000 election, the presidential election of 2000, spurred on some changes, some needed changes in the process. And that was the 2002 Help America Vote Act, which is called HAVA. And what that said was, and it was mainly because of the butterfly ballots in Miami-Dade County, where you could not really figure out what a voter intent was.
Hanging chads.
Hanging chads
and chits.
Chits and punch, and the
Never.
candidates were on either side, and you didn't know which candidate they intended to vote for. So that spurred on Help America Vote Act, where they said that only your Secretary of State, your respective Secretary of State, can certify a voting method, a voting machine, and you can only, as a county, pick from the certified voting methods approved by your Secretary of State. So we're only able, and it's a vigorous process from the Secretary of State to put voting methods and machines through the process and the rigors. So, we did that with community input and our Board of Commissioners with Wayne Richardson and Pat Siebold as President and Vice President, and our County Executive, Joe DiVincenzo, as a partnership. And we came to the conclusion that human marked paper ballots was the way to go. And so we purchased these optical scan readers and we're going paper.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think everyone, all the sponsors and the people who are, on tonight, are committed to help you educate the public. I mean, I certainly, for the league, will put this educational video that you shared with us on our website. We'll put your PSA also on our website. And I might ask the sponsors who are here tonight if you can do the same. And then if there's anything else, Chris, that you think that we can do to help educate the public about this and reassure the public that these changes are necessary and make sense, that we're more than happy to do that. Daryl, back to you.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Donna. These machines are being implemented to allow for a paper trail for voting, right?
Correct. That's right.
Can you explain why these machines give an audit trail while the old machines do not?
Okay, so the old machines were programmed electronically and they were push buttons. So we had a portion of the election and the votes that were human marked, which were the vote by mail ballots. But it's such a small portion. In Essex County, it's about 10%. of the vote is vote by mail. And that's human marked, and that's run through an optical scan. And we wanted to make sure the full election was human marked paper. And so with an electronic machine, it doesn't allow for a true audit of the voter intent. It just goes, it tells you how the voting machine was programmed, and those are the results. With this paper trail, every ballot on election day is marked by the individual voter. It is placed in the optical scan reader, and it stays in the optical scanner. And you can have write-ins, and then at the end of election, you can actually have an audit. And we are mandated, and it's a Senator Nia Gill bill from actually 2006, which she sponsored because she wanted a paper trail then with our old machines, the Sequoia machines in 2006. She wanted to see if we could retrofit those machines with a paper trail, but it would not allow for new technology to adapt to the old technology. So we are now in Essex County at a point where we have paper and a paper trail. So now we have to be audited after every election, and 2% of the voting districts randomly are chosen to be audited. So if there's 550 districts, if you do the math, is that 11? 11 voting districts that are audited randomly, and every paper ballot is gone over in that district to make sure it matches up with the results.
Now, in light of what is going on in Arizona, audit of the 2020 presidential election, can you explain what New Jersey law exists for election audits if and when we need one?
Well, there is the built-in audit that Senator Nia Gill has put into law, and that's a great thing for assurances and security and checks. But also, a candidate can request a recount, so it can come from the public where there's a close race and they want a whole district or a whole town or a whole county, in fact, recounted by hand. So the recounts are by hand, which they have to be because it's paper ballots. So, in Arizona, there's a lot of chasing ghosts, it seems, all of these accusations, and they're, going down a rabbit hole and following. I know there's some paper issue. There's accusations on what type of paper they used, and if
infrared lighting and all kinds of things.
Yes, infrared lighting. So it's going on a lot longer than you would think it should, and it obviously doesn't help with public assurances in the process.
Great. Well, back to Donna.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Chris, as Daryl was asking about the audit process, and you were talking about, what's happening in Arizona. Maybe we should just talk about, fraud. This is being driven by, concerns about fraud and stealing elections and whatever. What is your experience in Essex County with fraud and the incidents? And obviously, since you supervise this process, it's your job to make sure that it doesn't occur. But maybe you could just give us some comments on what you think.
Yeah, my experience is fraud is negligible. It's there's not organized fraud, and when it does occur, it is caught, and we've seen that. And the mechanisms that we have to catch any fraud are there, and it's a bipartisan process. Signatures are matched. The Board of Elections, which verifies signatures, is made up, as I said before, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats who vote on whether or not a ballot is accepted. And at the polling place, there's Republicans and Democrats that are hired to oversee the process. And then we have the federal postal agency, which is set up as a security team to check on if there's any fraud occurring. So the process is set up, and if any fraud does occur, which is negligible, it does get caught. So I feel good about the system that we have set up to ensure security in the process.
All right, and then back to these new machines, and maybe you could say, where did they come from? Have other jurisdictions used them? and if so, what has been the experience? Have other counties used them? But I don't think so, right? We're going to be the first.
We're going to be the first. Yeah, we're going to be the first.
Have other states used them? I mean, how has their experience been with using them?
Yes, so Pennsylvania uses these machines. New York State 2 years ago went all paper. And also 2 years ago, New York State went early voting, which I know we're gonna get to. In New Jersey, we're going to early voting in the general election. And that's going to be a real change, because we're incorporating for e-poll books, which is exciting. So no more paper records, and we need e-poll books to verify and to keep track of voters, especially during early voting, because there's going to be 10 early voting locations set up throughout Essex County. We're a Class A county where we're allowed to have 7 to 10 early voting sites, and we're going to choose to have 10 early voting sites. And you can go to any of those 10 early voting sites, and there's going to be a ballot on demand printer. So it's going to be a laptop set up where the poll worker puts your name and address, and then you sign the actual laptop, and then it prints out your ballot, where the ballot that goes to you, that where you live, and then you vote on it and put it in the optical scan reader to be counted. So that's exciting, and you'll have e-poll books on election day too for your specific district. And you talked about polling locations. So there are going to be some minor changes to polling locations because of the pandemic. So not all polling locations want to keep us. So there are some senior buildings that are opting out. So that's all being finalized within the next week because they have to sign a contract, and it's for for the primary and the general. And some have opted out. Schools must be in. So a school cannot turn down the county as a polling location. So we have that, especially being that they are large facilities, which helps.
So again, we can help educate about, check whether your usual polling location that you've been used to in the past is actually going to be open if you choose to go to the polls this year. And if it's not going to be open, like if you're in a senior center, maybe you definitely should try and do vote by mail as an alternative if you don't think you can get to a polling location. Okay, that makes sense to me. So does this mean, so what all that you described with the e-polling books and the early voting, we know that's not happening until November. But for June, will all the voting machines in the county be switched over at this point to these new machines? There won't be any old machines left?
That's correct. And we just had an election 2.5 weeks ago, school board election, April 20th for Newark and Irvington, and a special bond referendum in Fairfield, where we utilized the voting machines. It was a good test run. And the biggest concern was privacy. Voters need to use the privacy sleeve. And I even talked about this. We don't allow electioneering inside a polling place. You can't wear a T-shirt of candidate of your choice or a button. Just like your ballot can't be out in the open, walking around. You need to utilize the privacy screen. And when you put the privacy screen in the optical scan, it just sucks the ballot right into the optical scan to read it and count it. So we have to be mindful of that.
Does the county have to pay for these machines, or how are they funded?
Yeah, so it's $1.9 million, and we're having a lot of grant money that is paying for the voting machines, new machines. We were fortunate in the fact that last year we had 2 grants, a state grant, election grant, and a Facebook grant that actually paid for our primary and our general election. And we're moving into this primary with the Facebook grant helping to pay a large portion of our primary expenses, and they're paying up until June 30th. So we've been very fortunate with grant money over this last year.
That's good news. Great. Daryl, did you have something else that you wanted to bring up?
Yes, Chris, what is the process for training poll workers on the new updates to the election process? And is there a need to recruit new poll workers?
Okay, so the Board of Elections is charged with training poll workers, and they're in the process right now, and they've been in the process because they started with training Newark poll workers, Irvington poll workers, Fairfield, and now there's municipal elections happening this coming Tuesday with Cedar Grove, Verona, and South Orange. Those poll workers have been trained, and then over the next, would you say 30 days, you're going to have the balance of the county poll workers being trained, and they're being trained in person. But there's also a longer video for poll worker training, more in-depth, more detailed for all poll workers to have. And, we do have a lot of, interest in working the polls. It's $200 a day. And we do find that people want to be a part of it, and want to help and, help the process and learn the process along with that. So we've been very fortunate.
Yeah, it's a
But
participant.
I agree. You can please call the Board of Elections, and I'm sure there's openings that they can put you in. So that's very important.
Okay, that's good to know. And just a follow up, was the turnout low as usual for the recent school board election in Newark? And what can the city and state do differently to improve turnout?
Great question. And yes, it was low, 4%, which is extremely low. And I know that there's many factors that go into the low turnout, especially in a school election, because number one, a school election is held on its own, right, with one office, not multiple offices. It's one office, it's school board. The candidates aren't as well known as they are for other offices. Plus, in other elections where there's combined offices, there's free media, right? So you get a lot of free media with state offices and with national offices. So that's really helpful to spread the word. But we need to do a better job of educating the public. And some people feel that, or maybe if I don't know the candidates or as well as I should, maybe there should be mailings sent out, bipartisan mailings about the candidates and about the election to spur turnout, because it is what 57 to 60% of your tax dollars.
Right, exactly.
Is your school budget. So your interest is the school interest. It works hand in hand. New Jersey does allow for school boards to move their election to the general election. In Essex County, 20 of the 22 municipalities have done so. Newark and Irvington are still in April, but we do have that law allowing for school boards to go on the general election and bypassing that cost of an April election, because the county pays for the general election.
But there's work to do in being able to spur greater voter turnout.
Yeah, certainly for school boards. And also, Daryl, we at the league, we've even tried to maybe host some forums for, superintendent, for board of election, school board elections. And I think that, we can work with other partners in communities in Essex County to hold forums for school board elections for the candidates, like we do for municipal elections and other elections, as a way to generate history and discussion of the issues, because there are many school issues, obviously, that parents care a lot about, and they should hear from the candidates how they feel about it. Great. Daryl, was there anything else that you had? I had, I just had one.
I have this one here. Can you explain, Chris, the current controversy about requiring photo IDs for voting or voter registration, and why it is or not an issue in New Jersey?
Well, a lot of places around the country, as you know, they're putting in bills that are restricting voting, and each step that goes towards restriction just is able to take another step. And those voter IDs are, for the most part, state-issued IDs, which then can become even more restrictive and more restrictive as far as qualifying. So it's interesting, in New Jersey, because of Help America Vote Act in 2002, in 2005, New Jersey went to the voter registration application asking for the last 4 digits of your social security number or your driver's license number, which then is able to go through our statewide system, DMV, Social Security, to verify that who you say you are, that it matches. It takes about 48 hours to verify that you are the person you're putting on your registration. If you don't do that, you're sent a letter asking you to update that. But everyone previous to 2005 was grandfathered in into the system. But yeah, it's New Jersey, I think, does it the right way. I think we allow for more, and I'll say this too, over the last 3 years, our governor and our legislature have been incredible in bringing access and opportunities to vote and engaging voters. As you know, 24-hour online voter registration access, which was very heavy leading up to the general election. The DMV, which you're able to register to vote at the DMV. It used to be where you had to ask to be registered. Now you're automatically registered unless you ask not to be registered. Also granting the right to vote to people who are on probation and parole. Also, the secure ballot drop box mandate, the forever vote by mail file, which has increased voter participation. So all of these laws over the last 3 years have all been about including people in the process, and also the ballot cure, which is very important because voter signatures might not be updated. You might have registered to vote 20 years ago, and now your signature has changed.
Right.
And you vote by mail, and the Board of Elections checks it, they disqualify it, and you then get a letter to cure your signature. You have 10 days after Election Day where you have that form, and you can fax that form in, email that form in, hand that form in, and have your ballot counted. Half the people whose ballot was denied in last year's general cured their signature and had their ballots counted. One tragedy of vote by mail is that there is a percentage of voters who do not, this is one thing that's not curable, they do not include their ballot in the envelope, the return envelope. So there is no cure for no ballot. And you'd be surprised, 5% of people do not include their ballot. I guess there's 5 pieces of mail with the envelope, and it gets put different places. You might think that you put the ballot in and you didn't, and then maybe you send it off and it's too late. But you would be, there have been people last year, especially, who went and said, hey, I forgot to put my ballot in, and they were given the opportunity to rectify that. But a lot of people don't take that opportunity to just.
Hey, Chris, I send in bills with no checks, so.
Right. What's interesting is the voting machine, the electronic voting machine, for some of the insecurity of it, where there's no audit trail and paper trail, there was an ease with it because you could not overvote. It would not allow you to overvote. If you had 3 choices in an election, you couldn't vote for 4. It would lock it. On a paper ballot, if you have 2 choices for council, you're able to vote for 3, and that vote will not be counted, but every other correct vote on your ballot will be counted.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think. Thanks so much, Chris. This has been so helpful. But I don't want. I want to make sure that we leave some time for the audience to be able to ask some questions too. So I'm going to ask Susan Mack from the League of Montclair if. Susan, have we gotten any questions in from the audience?
Yes, we have a couple related to scanners. What assurance is there that the scanner does not kick out or misread voter intent? And are the scanning machines hooked up to the internet?
They are not hooked up to the internet. They are individually programmed, standalone. So there is a margin as far as the oval being filled in. So, if it's set at, you need 30% of the oval filled in or more to read, that would be actually picked up on a recount or an audit, the intent of the voter, and then there would be a determination between the commissioners as to the intent of the voter and a vote by the commissioners to count that. But yeah, that's another thing in going to the human intent ballot is that, whether or not they fill in the oval enough. And like I said, it is programmed at a minimal amount where the ballot is going to read, if you fill in a minimal, you want to fill the whole oval in for each choice, but it will allow and pick up the vote if you do not do that.
And if you make a mistake with a permanent Sharpie, can you get a replacement?
Yes, you can get a new ballot. So you go back up to the table and they take your spoiled ballot and give you a new ballot. You're able to do that. You're actually able to do that if you go up to the voting, the scanner, the optical scanner, place your ballot in the optical scanner, and then in the reader, it tells you whether or not it was accepted. If it was accepted, you're good. If you had an overvote, like I just said, you might have voted for 4 candidates and you're only allowed 3. It will tell you, do you want your ballot back to get another ballot because you overvoted for a certain office? And then it gives you that option. You might say, no, I'm fine with that. Or you're going to kick it back to yourself and go to the table and get a new ballot to vote on.
Great, thank you. I know you mentioned the sample ballot will be posted, I think tomorrow you mentioned on the website. Yeah. Some folks, are there going to be any public questions on the ballot? No, because this is a primary, right?
Because it's a primary, so it's not allowed on a primary because not everyone's able to vote. And that leads to another interesting, Donna brought up earlier about we're a closed primary state where you have to be a Democrat or a Republican to vote in the primary. Now, as an unaffiliated voter, you're open to choose, as Donna said, either by mail or in person on election day. When you make that decision to become or to vote as a Democrat or Republican, once you sign the certification envelope for the vote by mail or you sign the poll book, you are then a member of that party right at that point. So you are a member of that party and you have to vote in that party's primary. In a state like South Carolina, it's an open primary. You can vote, if you're a Democrat, you can vote in the Republican primary and vice versa. And anyone can choose on election day which primary they want to vote in. So that's the reason why there's no ballot questions allowed too. It's not a general election.
There was a question about with limited polling locations, how is this not a form of voter suppression?
There's not limited polling locations. So there's going to be 550 voting districts. There will be at least 300 polling locations, just like in the past. New Jersey has the most polling locations per capita of any state by far. And you look at the lines in other states at presidential elections, even other elections, and you see 3, 4, 5 hour lines. We don't have that in New Jersey because what they've done in other states is they've regionalized polling sites where it becomes, instead of having 1,000 voters in a polling district, they make it 30,000 and they almost force you to vote by mail. It's a form of saying, hey, vote by mail. You have to be more proactive to vote by mail in those states. So they're pushing each of that. But New Jersey, has so many polling locations for a smaller amount of voters than any other state.
I think, Chris, you were saying that if somebody's old polling location isn't open this year, it's not because the state is doing that, it's because they may have decided they don't want to participate as a polling location.
That's correct, but we are finding an alternative.
Right.
That location might be the best alternative, handicap accessible and location wise, but if they're denying, and they have the right to deny our entrance, we have to choose another location.
So, but the message is that we're not limiting polling locations.
No.
So there was a question which concerns me for a lot of folks. If I voted by mail in 2020, will I automatically be receiving a vote by mail ballot this year? So I can
no, and a great question.
Reiterate that again. Yeah.
Yes, and that is very important because last year, because of the pandemic, it was an all vote by mail primary and all vote by mail general. If you were a registered voter, you will automatically mail the ballot. We are back to hosting regular elections where you have to, either you're on the forever vote by mail file, or you have to proactively apply for a vote by mail ballot. We have 42,000 voters on our forever vote by mail file where they are being sent a ballot for every future election, unless they request otherwise in writing, and in writing is by email to us saying they want to come off because they'd rather go in person. But yeah, we want to make sure that everyone understands that we're back to a normal election, and you will not be mailed a ballot unless you're on the forever vote by mail file or you requested a ballot proactively.
Can you say that phone number again? Someone requested that phone number again.
973-621-4922.
Thank you.
And the email address is it
Info, that's great. Go ahead, Daryl, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
was it info@essexcountyclerk.com?
No, info@essexclerk.com.
Essex
So it's
Clerk.
even simpler. That's right.
Right.
Info@essexclerk.com.
Okay, right, great.
And just a reminder that May 18th is the last day to register to vote for the primary, correct?
That's correct.
And one more slip and one more here. So there was some concern about long lines or problems with the machines, with the new machine and the new process. Is that something you found? Well, I guess with the low voter turnout, you probably didn't have issues with long lines. New machines.
Interesting question. No, you do. That's a very interesting question because we didn't have long lines, like you said, because of the low voter turnout. But it would lend itself to being a little busier because it takes a little longer to vote now, right? So previous with the electronic voting machines, it was simpler because it was a full face ballot and you could just push the button of your choice. It wouldn't allow you to overvote. With a paper ballot, you have to go to a secluded privacy area and vote your choice, filling in the oval of every vote of your choice, and then get in line to place your ballot into the optical scan. And then, like I said, if there's a mistake made and you now want to get another ballot, that takes even more time. But I think the security, the voter intent, the paper trail, the audit, the allowance for a recount, an accurate recount of the voter intent is most important.
Yeah, and the early voting, which comes in November, will help solve hopefully long lines too. Because if you stretch out everyone going to the polls over, the week before, election day, that should help too.
Absolutely, and that's been proven to be approximately 15% of the vote for early voting around the country, which would be great to get 15%, along with 10 to 15% vote by mail already in before election day.
Right. Right. Anything else, Susan, or?
Just there's a couple of questions about what the ballot will look like, and I don't want to go through every position that's on the ballot, but there will be a sample ballot put on the Essex County Clerk website tomorrow. So for all those who have that question, you can check it out there.
Mm-hmm. And we can put it in a plug for the league's work on redesign better ballot initiatives, but we don't have time to get into that tonight on redesign ballots.
Right.
Anything else, Susan?
That's it.
If not, great. Chris, this has been so helpful. I can't thank you enough for doing this. And it's so important that we hear directly from you all the changes that are going on, and we have the opportunity to ask you questions. So unfortunately, we want to keep this to being on time tonight. So I'd like to turn it over to my friend Daryl Jeffries to close us out with some closing remarks before we have the musical performance.
Well, thank you, Donna. On behalf of the Oranges and Maplewood NAACP, my sincere thanks to Susan Mack, my co-host, Donna Ward, the League of Women Voters, Essex County Clerk, Chris Durkin, and the Honorable Dr. Marquita Evans for this opportunity to participate in this most important forum on voting and the voting process. It's definitely not what we think it is. Now more than ever, the NAACP is as relevant today as when it was founded in 1909. The very survival of our community and our democracy as we know it depends upon your active involvement. We must organize and coalesce as never before in our history to make real the promise of equality by doing your part to hasten the NAACP's and like-minded advocacy organizations like the League of Women Voters Agendas for Progress. We must continue to register to vote and vote like our lives depend upon it, because in fact, the fate of our community and who represents us is of critical importance. We stand upon the shoulders of trailblazing pioneers. It's all about legacy and the mantle of leadership we create for current and future generations. The power is in our hands. Now's the time to say enough and to suit up and to show up. The knee has been on our necks for the past 400 years. We live in extraordinary times amid the pandemics of COVID-19, police brutality, voter suppression, domestic terrorism, white privilege, and racial injustice in every aspect of American society. We, the NAACP, are on a sacred mission, the Orange's Maplewood, to enlist 500 new members, to galvanize into a force for good, to reimagine ourselves by changing the narrative to address the pressing need in our community, to foster positive outcomes, and to meet our people where they are in our ongoing quest to address the devastating and destructive legacy of systemic racism. The legacy of racial hatred in America is a disease more destructive than the most aggressive form of cancer. Our community is under siege. A new brand of Jim Crow racism is taking root, whose sole purpose is to disenfranchise the power of the Black vote, the Black and brown vote, and our democratic way of life as we know it. Currently, more than 361 bills with restrictive provisions exist in 47 states to suppress the Black and brown vote and change the outcome of elections. As the late Congressman John Lewis, civil rights activist, stated, it's time for us to get into good trouble. Now is the time for us to commit ourselves to be at the forefront of constructive resistance and engagement to address a cascade of unrelenting efforts to suppress and dismantle hard-fought gains in social justice and racial parity. Kindly consider becoming a member or renewing your membership today in the NAACP. Your participation is essential to the important work ahead of us. We have a talented new leadership team that is energized and eager to move boldly forth on a visionary agenda whose primary purpose is to foster real, meaningful, and lasting progress. Join us at our virtual branch meeting. Meetings are held virtually the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. And you can join us on our website, naacp.oranges-maplewood.org. We are at a moment of great inflection and reckoning, and I urge all of you to consider volunteering on a committee and being a member on a committee that best suits your talents and interests. So we have 13 standing committees, and there's plenty for you to do. And we encourage you to join us in this quest for racial justice and equality. And with that, I'd like to thank you all again for joining us. And I'd like to pivot now to introduce the mass choir from Arts High School in Newark to perform the iconic Negro National Anthem composed by James Weldon Johnson. I might have to start singing it myself. Dr. Evans and I can do it.
I was going to say, you have to be like Barack Obama when he sang Amazing Grace a cappella.
Amazing Grace. Yeah. We'll do it, Dr. Evans. Let's do it.
She's saying no.
Let's hear the choir. Can we get the choir?
Let's see. Anna, are we having problems, technical problems? Oh, she's going to try again.
We're having trouble with that video.
Okay. Oh, what a shame.
Well,
Well, well, you know what?
Rejoice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound out as the rolling sea. Sing
a song full of the
faith that
the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the
present has
brought
brought
us. Facing the
rising
tide of a new day.
begun.
I can't hear you.
Every voice shall sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stormy the road we trod, bitter the chasing on, felt in the days when unworn and died, yet with a steady beat and a weary feet, come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path where the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past,
goodness, after looking at all of those young faces, this is
Beautiful.
why we do this work.
There's hope.
Exactly.
There's hope.
Thank you to
There's
all the
hope in this
speakers
game.
tonight.
There's
And
hope.
thank you to all of my friends and co-sponsors that put on this week. Let's do this again. Let's keep working on this together. And it's been such a pleasure to be
Yes,
with you
yes.
tonight.
Thank you,
And on
Dr.
behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area, I wish everyone a very good evening.
Good night, everyone.
God bless you all. Keep hope alive.
Yes.